Hey, welcome to Flight Test. I'm David, and today we're going to build the FT-Viggen. So before we start, get your parts and everything. You need 4 sheets of foam board and download the plans or buy our speed build kit, our store, if you're lazy or want to support us. Cut out all your parts and let's get started. So first thing you want to do is get the wings out. So we're going to start with the wing, and it's very easy to pull apart. You just pull it. There's small little tabs holding this in place here. So all you want to do is just pull there, pull a little bit here, pull a little bit there until it's all loose. So it just falls out. So as you can see, there's a fold here in the middle. And that's because we need to get the kit in the box, otherwise we can't ship it to you. And also, it acts as a really good reinforcement joint. So it's going to be a glue spar. And also, if you're going to go on a heavy side, if you're going to run a really heavy setup, you might want to add a strip of carbon fiber in here. Just a really small 3mm by 1mm thick carbon spar fits beautifully in here. But we're going to just do it with glue this time. So just a good healthy amount of glue. Don't go too crazy, but don't go too sparingly either. Then put it on a flat surface. And as you can see, it spills out a lot of glue. I'm going to squeegee this. So if you have a clean surface, push it down, take your scrap piece of foam, and just squish it nice and good on there. We need to let this dry, and we're going to start with the fuselage in the meantime. As you can see, there's a B fold and an A fold on this. So we're going to start off by removing these pieces in between here. And what I do, as you can see, I fold it completely over 180 degrees, and that leaves this little thing here in the center. And all I do is I take my thumb and I push sideways, back and forth a little bit, either way. So you can see it just falls off on its own and leaves nothing behind. So remove all those pieces. We're gonna add glue to the sides here. As you can see, there's a B fold, so this side cheek goes on the outer side, not on the top, but on the side. So you want to push that down towards the table and keep this at a 90-degree angle. If you have a speed build kit, you're going to have a 90-degree angle. Almost at every corner is going to be a 90-degree angle. So what you can do is just cut loose a piece and use that as your 90-degree angle. So let's glue this. And you want to add the glue to this side cheek, not in the middle, but on the side cheek, because that's where the strength needs to be. So I'm just going to add some hot glue. Don't go too crazy. More glue does not mean a stronger bond. Then you put that on the table, fold that downwards, and then push it in, and push it against the table, downwards the table. Then 90 degree, check that, and hold it until it dries. Repeat the same step on the other side. Now, this is an A fold, which means that this piece has to go on top of the other piece and then keys into these 2 pieces up here. So that's how you want to glue it. So you want to add glue here, here, and on the bottom here. And you can, if you want to, add on the side cheeks. There's not too much strain on this piece, so it's not terribly necessary. But we'll go ahead and do it anyway. Just a little glue, you don't need too much again. And then just fold this piece up, push it against the piece, and if there's any glue left, just scrape it off with a scrap piece of foam or your fingers if you're manly. And you can put that on the table and push it down to get a nice 90-degree bend. Okay, so that's your battery bay or inner fuselage done. So now we can actually take on the fuselage, the main fuselage. So there's, as you can see, there's score lines, and there's etch lines, and there's cut lines. So if you see the plans, the blue means just etch, the red means score, and the black means cut through. So in your kit, there's a barbecue skewer included, and we're going to use this to broaden up these score lines here. So what you want to do is go over it once. Don't push too hard. Don't scratch the material on the other side, but just go over it, push into it. Now go over it a couple of times. Don't go crazy on the first turn, but now you can feel it's working itself. And now you're going to push to one side, make this wider. So you're going to push left first time, and then the second time you're going to take it and you're going to push right. This is so your fold becomes easy and there's no real stress on it that could make it crease in the wrong places. We're going to do this for all score lines, including this, 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 and this. It's a lot of lines. Take your time. It's going to make the next step so much easier. As you can see here, there's 4 little squares. Those are not cut all the way through, and we need to pick those out. And I usually use the barbecue skewer top here, and I just go in and you don't want to damage the paper. It usually comes out pretty easily. So just repeat that on all those 4, and don't damage the paper. Don't go crazy. It's better to pick a little few extra times than go crazy and puncture the paper on the other side. Now it's time to take the inner fuselage thingy, that very technical name, and make sure it fits in these slots that you just pulled out the foam out of. Look at that, it fits nice and square. And you want this to line up with the front edge. There's some wiggle room in there. So you want those 2 pieces there to line up with the fuselage. As you can see, it's not really doing that at the moment. So I need to push it back 0.5 millimeter or 1 millimeter. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to glue it in place. So we're going to add glue here around the whole perimeter, but not on these. It's not necessary. So just don't go too crazy. So line it up with the tabs, push it down, make sure it's good in the front, then wipe off the excess glue. Now that that's dry, we're going to fold the fuselage. This is the fun part and also a little bit scary. So you're going to take your hands and you want to spread them as wide as you can. And you want to get the hand underneath this line here on both sides. You're going to fold the fuselage. Keep your thumb on this piece here. You're going to fold the whole fuselage and fold these down with your thumbs. That's your fuselage shape. And that's why we did the scoring before. That makes it really easy and it doesn't stress anything. Now we're going to add glue to this piece here and we're going to fold it over. These lines here are for centering this, so you have an idea. Either you can glue one side at a time or you can glue both sides. I'm going to opt for gluing one side at a time. And I'm still going to fold up the second piece just so I don't strain the other side there. And now I'm going to make sure, now I can fold it down. And I'm going to make sure that it's on the line and push down hard on the whole surface. The glue makes like a lubricant, like it makes the piece want to slide around. So you want to pin it down and push out that glue to get a good surface. Repeat the same process on the other side. Just push it down, wait until it dries. That looks pretty good. Now that you've done your fuselage, we're going to install the EDF in this. This comes as either EDF, swappable, the firewall mount, or thrust vectoring. So in this particular video, we're going to show you the EDF version, but any other version, click on the link below in the video, underneath the video. Just click the link underneath, you know. Okay, so anyway, we're going to use this power package, the 70mm power package from Grace and Hobby. It's a very cheap 70mm EDF version that works very well for this application. It comes with speed controller, EDF fan, 4 servos, and you only need 2, so you have 2 extra. Woohoo! So take your EDF unit, and we're going to install this. You can put the rest away for now. Now there's a plank in the kit, which has I'll turn this around for you. It has, as you can see, 70mm and 64mm inserts. So if you can use a 64mm fan or a 70mm fan. In this case, we're going to use a 70. So we're going to take out these parts here. Just pop them out. Now, there's 3 different ones. There's 70 millimeter, that's for the back end, all the way at the exhaust. This is 70 millimeter back, it's towards the exhaust, but still on the fan. This is 70 millimeter front, and it's going to be all the way at the top of the EDF units. As you can see, there are different sizes because the fuselage tapers. So we're going to remove this little circle in here, and all you do is just take it and rotate it, and it pops right out. So you grab that and just rotate it, and it pops right out. Those 2 pieces we're going to start with. We're going to put that on our fan. So you want the front one going first. Now, it depends a little bit on your EDF unit, how well this fits, and if your EDF unit has these slots, you need to cut out little slots in the foam itself to hold this. So we're going to do that. As you can see, it doesn't really fit in here, but that's because different EDF units has slightly different sizes. So all you're going to do is you're going to take your barbecue skewer and you're just going to squish that edge here. Just push that edge a little bit. Don't go too crazy and destroy things, but just a little bit. That's going to help a lot when you push that on so it doesn't do anything bad. As you can see, it just slides on. So to position this properly, I'm going to have the wires come out a little bit to the side here. So I want these things to be parallel to the bottom. Push that down and make a mark. And I'm going to remove this again, and I'm going to use my X-Acto blade to cut a relief for that. It slides on really nicely. So you want it to go pretty far forward there. It's pretty good. As you can see, it all depends on the fan you have, but this fan, it protrudes a little bit on the bottom and at the top. Now, it depends on your fan as well, the size of that. And so either you can cut a relief in the fuselage and then the wing in the foam, or you can cut this ring. It's up to you. I'm gonna, in this particular one, I know I'm just gonna use this fan, so I'm gonna cut a relief in the foam. I'm gonna put the back piece on first though. Do the same thing as the front, where we're gonna squish in the edges here. And then slide that on. You don't want the back one to match up with the edge here, because we need to add a thrust tube to this later. So we want it to slide down so you have roughly a centimeter left. Now we're going to install this in our fuselage. And here's an edge line in the back. That's going to line up with the back end of this back plate. So it's going to be right there. So I'm going to take my finger and push down on this fan. That's where I need to do the relief for the fan. So I'm going to cut that out using a razor blade. You don't need to get everything out. It's just so the top of the fan doesn't push up anymore. So if I hold that and fold the sides cheeks here, they should match up really nicely, which they do. Now I'm going to add glue to the inner circles here to hold the EDF fan in place. And I usually squeegee it out to get a nice big piece of like the surface tension there. You get the most amount of surface on the fan itself, between the fan and the foam. So I'm going to do this all around the fan and on both pieces. So we're going to glue this in place. I'm going to glue just the top in place here, or the bottom or top, depending on where you're looking. So just so I don't have to wiggle around, and make sure it's nice and straight toward compared to that line there in the back. Push it down, get good tension on it, and it's nice and parallel to the back line. Now that that's dry, I'm going to feel this out. I'm going to make sure that everything fits again. Oh, that looks gorgeous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some glue down here and up here. I'm just going to add some glue, and I'm just going to hold this until it dries, and repeat the same process on the other side. Now that that's dry, see, and that's really strong. We're going to think about the wiring now. What I like to do is I cut a hole in the top here. This is going to be covered with a ridge later, and I like to run the wires on the top here and then make another hole and snake them through down. That way there's nothing in the inlet, no obstruction in the inlet. It's easier if you want to. It doesn't really affect it that much. You can just run the wires on the inside here. You can just make a little hole and snake the wires through on any side here. You can just cut into it, put the wires in, connect it, and you're good. I'm going to do it the fancy way. Don't cut it in the middle, because that's where the vertical stabilizer is going to go down and glue. So you want it slightly offset. And take a look where your wire is going to go. So you want it on, I want, in this case, them to be on this side. So you can even do it from this side here. I'm going to just cut a little hole here. Don't need a huge hole. Now, we're going to take the speed controller out of here. And as you can see on this particular speed controller, it does not come with connectors. So you need to solder on your own connectors. And also, you need longer wires. So you will need some wire in order for it to be able to connect, because it needs to go. The speed controller I like putting just behind here. That way it gets airflow, but it doesn't obstruct the airflow too much. So I usually put the speed controller here, route the wires down here, and connect it to the back. So we need some extra wire, solder that on, and solder on some bullets connectors, and we're going to get back to this step. So now I soldered on the cables on the speed controller, and I had ridiculously thick wires, but that's always good. Better too big than too small. So I'm going to install this ESC here in this area. And to do that, I'm going to cut some holes. First, I'm going to cut one hole here, and then I'm going to cut one hole here for the wires. Now I'm going to thread these through this hole here. Just shove them in there now. And now I can figure out where I need to make my holes for my hole for these wires. And be sure that you don't cut too far so you're outside of the ridge on the top. And it doesn't really matter if you cut in the middle up here, because the vertical stabilizer don't go this far. Now I'm going to feed these wires through the hole. Just super easy, straightforward. As you can see, go up on the top. I'm going to feed them through the hole that we made previously. Now I'm going to hook this up, and I'm going to test this system before I continue on. So I make sure that this spins the correct direction so it doesn't do anything weird and I forget about it later and I can't get to the wires. You want as little as possible of the wires exposed to the air stream. You want it to be as sleek as possible. You don't want any extra drag in the exhaust tube. To be able to test the system, you have to cut this hatch off. And all you have to do is just cut these little tabs here. But be careful, because we're going to use this part as the bottom piece of the fuselage, not the fuselage, the battery hatch later. If you use too much glue on the inside here, like here I can feel there's a glue joint here. Just be careful and don't cut yourself. There we go. Put that to the side and install your receiver or a servo tester. Okay, so now that's hooked up. We're going to flip it over, hold it down, be sure that nothing gets sucked into the fan and destroys it. We're going to just run it up a little bit. And it's blowing forward at this point, which is wrong. So we need to switch two of the wires. Yay! So that's working. Perfect. Now we can unhook this and go to the next step. Now I'm going to use a little piece of tape to hold the speed controller down. This is a really strong double-sided tape. I'm just going to add a little bit to the back, peel it off and push it into place. It's not going to go anywhere, but if you decide to use hot glue on this, it might actually get too hot during the summer, melt, and the speed controller can come loose, and you really don't want that to happen. I'm just going to push that down really good, and that's not going to go anywhere. Cool. Okay, next step is we're going to install the servos. Now in the kit there were 4 servos included. We're going to take 2 of them, we're going to center them up, and then we're going to install them. So plug them in and make sure they're centered. You want the control horns to point this way, 90 degrees to the body. So I've centered the servos up, and I put the linkage stoppers in the second hole from the servo arm. I know it covers up the first hole, but it's on the second hole. It's the same for the HXT 900 Xtronic servos and also for the Laser Toys servos. So second hole usually gives you pretty good throw, although actually on the high side depending on your speed. But that's how I like it. So there's 2 servo positions here. As you can see there, it's marked by an etched line here and here. And depending on which version you build, if you build a really lightweight indoor version, you might want to put the servos up here because otherwise the CG might be really difficult to get properly. So on normal builds, I usually put the servos on the back because the shorter the link, the less flex you're going to have. So I'm going to cut these 2 out on both sides here. There we go. Make sure the servo actually fits in there. And it depends a little bit how you feel. If you want the servo pointing backwards or forward, it doesn't really matter. So make sure that fits. That looks gorgeous. You want that to be flush with the bottom here. Now either you can run the cables like the other cables, run it on the bottom here, just cut it and be lazy, or you can run those through the top as well and make it really clean. That's what I'm going to do. But it takes a little bit of effort because I've already put in the fan and I want to make that hole underneath the fan and then snake the wires through. If I've been a little bit more clever, I would have done that beforehand. Little hole. Now you will need some servo extensions. These are 18 inches and they're a pretty good length. You get plenty of extra cable after you're done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to snake these through this side, which makes everything so much easier. Then you can just hook the cables up and the other end and just pull them through. As you can see, it's very easy to get to them then, so you don't have to worry too much. Pull that up with the pliers. I'm going to hook these up. Now make sure you get it signal to signal. And here's a really good tip. Take a piece of tape, just normal clear tape. Take a little piece, then tape it over where the 2 pieces join together. And now it's really difficult to pull those 2 apart, and you can actually pull on it much harder without them disconnecting. I highly recommend doing that on both sides. It's time to glue the servos in place before you pull the wires too tight. And all I'm going to do is just add a little glue on the top here. Just a tiny little bit. Most of the strength is going to be on the bottom later. We're going to add that glue later. This is mostly to hold it in place while we're doing that. Repeat the same process on the other side. Gorgeous. Time to pull the cables through then. Do it one at a time. Just be sure that you're not catching too much. And you don't have to worry. You don't have to pull it all the way through if you don't want to. You can leave some cable in there if you don't want to pull the whole connector out, because this wire is long enough. But if you're If it isn't long enough, you can just be careful and pull it through, like that. It's not that difficult. The tape really helps a lot. I'm gonna run these all the way up at the front end of the speed controller. I'm gonna make a little hole and I'm gonna snake it through. Be careful so you don't cut your speed controller. And then just feed them through, and then through the big hole that you made earlier for the speed controller into the battery bay. Now, I think it's time to do the thrust tube. You're gonna need this little piece of cardboard, your FT-Viggen kit. Flip this over. Now, to show this, I have another EDF just to illustrate the point a little bit easier. You're gonna take this piece, and you're gonna wrap it around the EDF unit. And it's gonna be a tapered tube down to the much smaller diameter at the exhaust. That's so you get an optimal amount of thrust and speed. The smaller the tube, the higher the efflux speed, but also the less static thrust you're gonna get. This is almost the maximum thrust, but still a lot of speed. So it's a good happy medium. So I'm gonna take this and wrap it around. I'm gonna take a piece of tape, just normal clear tape. This is just to hold it in place for now. So I'm gonna wrap it around the EDF unit here, and I'm gonna close this just by taking a little piece of tape, putting it over and pulling it and closing it off. So now it actually stays on there. Here comes the other piece. I'm gonna rotate that. Gonna make sure that this fits properly over here. Now, as you can see, the thrust tube is longer than it needs to be. This is because some EDF units have a shorter body, and I wanted to make sure that you're not short any material. Now that you have that, you will also need to make a little insertion for the cables, because the cables want to poke out there. It needs to be a little cut in this piece. And I'm going to choose to do that on the bottom, because you want to have access to this piece where it overlaps later. So I'm just going to cut a little relief. I'm just going to fold that back because it doesn't really matter. I'm going to make sure that this fits on here. Fits very nice. So this piece that says 70 on it, you want to put that in the back, and you can roll this tube up. It doesn't really matter anymore. At this point, we just need this piece to match up the back here, and we're going to glue this in place. And if you're happy with the fit here, and it touches all the way around, you can actually glue this in place. Make sure it's in the proper spot. And to do that, we can have this piece, wrap that, and put it where it's supposed to be. And then we can add a couple of dabs of glue up here, just so it holds it in place. I'm going to push that in, hold that, and I'm going to squeegee it. Get nice, big, nice surface. Now that that's dry, I'm going to pull this off. I'm going to add glue around the edges, all around the edges. I don't have to go super crazy, but you need some glue. Make sure the 70 is pointing inwards. Otherwise, you'll have a 70 in your back, and I don't want that. Then just slide this into place. Make sure it's parallel everywhere. And then squeeze it into shape. Now that that's dry, we're going to do the thrust tube. As you can see, it's like there's a gap here. It's not attached to anything yet. So it needs to take the shape of the outer circle. We're just going to push it out in each direction and add some glue on the inside. That's going to hold it in place, and then we can add some tape on the top. Glue here, around the whole thing here. Make sure I get good adhesion to the whole thing. Just squeeze it out a little bit. And then put your fingers inside here and then push in each direction. Take a good look around it, and that looks like it's a nice circle, like it's touching everywhere. So just hold that until it's dry. Okay, now we're going to take some tape. I'm just going to take a whole strip here, and I'm going to, because you can see this part is flexing up and down. I don't like that. So I'm going to add one piece along the whole thing here, just to hold that in place. Push that down. And then, just to go crazy, I'm just going to take 2 long pieces, tape over here. Since we're not going to get to this area ever again, might as well just go crazy. As you can see, it's like a huge tube sticking out. Lots of extra stuff. So I'm going to use a razor blade and cut around the edges here. You can use a scissor or a tool of your choice, but I'm going to use the X-Acto blade. And also, this sands really nicely if you need to. Now that that's done, we're going to take the fuselage, put it to the side, and we're going to take the wing. Before we do anything else, we're going to pop these up and we're going to do a 45-degree bevel cut on the top here. So we do the hinge line. Super standard stuff. That's working pretty good. I'm going to do the same on the other one. And that's good enough. I highly recommend doing the hot glue hinge that we've been using a lot lately because it adds strength, and if you're going to fly this model for a long time, you might as well do it. So all you do is you take some hot glue and you either put it straight on a squeegee, so I'm going to do now. So I'm just going to add a dab here, and I'm going to squish this on the hinge, onto the foam, and squish it in hard. You want a super thin bead on here. Do the same on the other side. Let that dry properly before doing anything else. You don't want it to be sticking like that. You want it to dry properly. Just take some time. While that's drying, we can go ahead and pop these little notches out. It's just one little cut, or just push on it and they fall out on their own. Now we're going to take the fuselage, put it on the wing. There's notches here that you want to line up. So that should fit straight on there if you cut everything right. Since the fan, I'm going to show you, is poking out more than anything else, we need to cut a relief. So actually, I already pushed a little bit and it made a little dent in there. So I can just go ahead and do the same thing I did on the top, on the wing here. Use my barbecue skewer again. Okay, I'm gonna try that until it fits properly. Oh, that's gorgeous. As you can see, it fits really nice against this line here. All the tabs are in. Everything is square, nothing is poking out or anything. We're ready to glue this. So we're gonna pop it off and we're gonna add glue to all these areas here. Around all this and on here. And it's on the servos as well, because we want those to stick to the wing. And also on in between the fan here. Turn around, pop in. I usually line it up on one side first, pop it into the slots, then I go over to the other side and I make sure that they line up into the slot, and then I push it down. Push it down against the surface, make sure it's flat, so you get the good, nice bond between the two surfaces. And just hold it. So while it's being cured properly, we can put that away a little bit and we can do the ridge. As you can see, it's a B-fold, this main part. So first thing you want to do is just like before, you want to break this part away all the way. So what I usually do is just make sure it's loose all the way. And then I just start getting it loosened up. And pull it this way, not the opposite way. It pulls away from the paper. Otherwise you're going to end up with a teared piece, which you don't want. Do this with all the little cutouts. Okay, now that we removed all the little pieces in between here, we're going to fold these up in the B pattern, which means the side cheek goes next to the middle. Once at a time, and don't go too far up here. This piece is going to be glued later, so you don't want to get glue in there now. So fold that up, make sure it's 90. Push it against the table, make a nice square fold. Nice little 90. Repeat that on the other side. Now that you're done that, we need to do this little tiny little bit in the back. And this is an A-fold. It's really hard. I couldn't really put it on there, but yes, it's an A-fold. So I'm just going to add some glue to the sides here to make sure that the paper sticks to the sides and make it nice, clean little edge. So I'm going to fold this up into this piece and then wipe off some glue on the sides and then push it against the table. That makes the absolutely cleanest fold that you can get. Then move it around on the table. If you have too much glue like I had, it's gonna string up before you attach the piece to the table. Now it's time to do the front part. As you can see, you can break this apart and it can be loose. This is because, as you can see, this is angled downwards. So you want this to fold down like that. So we're gonna add glue to the center here, just a tiny little bit. And then on the side cheeks here, don't go too far forward because you don't want it to spill out. Now I put this on the table and I usually push the sides out before it gets down to the table, and then I push it inwards so you don't get too much glue pouring out the sides. And push that against the table and push it down and push it in 90 degrees. Now again, this little fold here, it's the same thing as on the back. It's an A-fold, so you want to add glue to the little edge there and on the sides. And we're going to do the same thing as we did on the bottom. We're going to do on the front. Fold it in, push it down against the table, hold it nice and square, move it around a little bit if you have too much glue. It's going to make the nicest fold. Oh, look at that. Yummy. Now that piece is done. Now we're going to put that on the plate. Now we need to knock out these 4 little pieces here. So I'm going to cut those little tabs that hold them in place. Don't cut too deep because there's stuff underneath here now. Pop these out. Make sure you know where they are. Otherwise they'll end up in your fan and it's not a good sound to hear. Now this piece is going to fit on top of here. It's going to hide all your wires. Now I have a ridiculous amount of wires in mine, so it's going to be slightly more difficult, but it's still going to work. So this fits this way, front to back, and just fit them into the slots and you're good to go. And look at that. So we're going to glue that in place after you're happy with the fit. So pull it off. And it's a good idea to have a barbecue skewer handy to push in the wires if they get in between. Or, like I'm going to do in this case, so I'm going to take some tape and I'm going to have these wires wrapped a little bit. They don't have to be held in place that terribly much, but it just helps a little bit so they don't get caught everywhere. You don't want to tape it down too much though, because that's going to end up hindering you later. So again, add glue around all the edges. And push it down and hold it in place. Now that that's all properly dried, I'm going to cut this little piece out here in the middle. Just like before, just cut the little tabs. Be careful so you don't cut the cables underneath it. And then just pull that out. The vertical stabilizer is going to be in here. Now, if you look down here, there's cables. You obviously can see the cables in here. So what I usually do is I take the barbecue skewer and I push the wires to one side. That's why you didn't want them all taped down, because you can't move them. So I'm just going to move them over to the side here so they don't get in the way of my vertical stabilizer. Push it in here and we're going to make sure it fits. And just so you get a feeling for how it's going to move around the cables when it gets in there. So it's going to slide in there, and that looks pretty good. So we're going to add some glue to this, and then do the exact same thing, just with the glue on the bottom on the sides. So I'm going to take a piece of this, make a little squeegee. Squeegee that off, turn it around. I'm going to take a look from the side of the table, make sure that's straight. So always compare it to the wing, not the fuselage or anything else, always the wing. That's what creates your lift, and that's what you want to be counteract with so it tracks straight. Otherwise it's going to do all kind of crazy stuff. Now we just need to do the nose and the canopy, and we're done. These two pieces make up your nose. So to start out, we're going to remove these side cheeks on the bottom piece. Just like before, you just pull them off and just pull it slightly. These are slightly wider than normal, so they might be a little bit more difficult to pull off. Just take your time, don't be in a hurry, and it's going to turn out just fine. If you pulled on it, it's going to bow upwards. You don't want that. You want to fold that down again. You make it push towards the thing you want to glue it against later. So you make a nicer fold. So push that up. Now, this is the nose itself. There's two little no-no marks here. Those two are two pieces you want to glue and not score. So I'm just going to add a tiny little glue joint here, a little tiny bit of glue. Just push that together and squeegee that. Do the same on the other side here. And just up to that line. You don't want to go crazy. It doesn't need to go that far. Just a little bit of glue here. Oh wow, I went really crazy. So I'm going to push that and pull it off. I went really crazy on that glue. Anyway, so you want to push that, and they're supposed to lay flat. The reason they are there is because it adds another angle to it, and also we had to, in order to get it to fit on the folding piece, there had to be a line there, unfortunately. But it actually adds a little bit dimension to it. Now that these are dry, we're going to go ahead and score these lines, all the vertical lines, except the ones that has the no-no symbol on it. So just go over just like you did on the fuselage, and go over them a couple of times to make them nice and soft. You don't have to push as hard as you did on the fuselage sideways, just a little bit. You want to do this line as well. Push that. You want to really go over these lines here. And you don't want to go on this line, you don't want to go too far. Stop before you go to that no-no line. It's a very technical term. Go over them a couple of times, make them soft, nice and soft. You don't want to stress the foam, because then you're going to end up with a crease. You don't want a crease. That looks ugly. So go over them a few times. There's no rush. And I usually flip it around and go forward as well. Now, this front piece here, we need to cut that off. Just pull it off and shoot it off. Now, I'm going to remove a little bit on the side ones here. That just makes it the fold easier. So I'm just going to remove like 1/2 inch. Come on, my knife's getting dull. Okay. Now, if there's any excess foam in here, you want to drag that off. Make sure there's not any extra stuff in there. You don't want that to bind up your fold. Now it's time to fold it. We're going to place it in our palm. I'm going to push in the middle. I'm going to fold this up and this ought to form a really nice fold. You can help a little bit if you feel there's too much pressure on anything. It means that you haven't scored it enough. So I'm going to go back. I missed a little bit there. That feels much better. I'm going to hold it on the sides, and I'm going to gently fold it over here. You want these two to be 90 degrees to that, and you want these two to overbend. So also, now is a really good time to overbend the whole thing. So you want to slowly work it together so the sides are touching. Don't go too fast or you will end up destroying this piece or end up with creases. Make sure that those two touch all the way forward. Make a nice, easy fold later. If you go crazy on the glue, if you go too far forward, that's going to make a stress point for the folding. So that's going to crease your foam. So don't go too far when adding the glue in the back here. Now, you want this bottom piece, and you want to test fit this. This is going to go on the bottom, and it's going to slide in the bottom just like that, and it's going to match up to those folds there, so you can see. So you want that line to match up with that line and that line. That, and that. You want this to be 90 degrees towards this and the top. You want this line here to touch all the way up and down on both sides, because that makes it so much easier afterwards while you're gluing this. I'm going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to add glue just for the front part here on both sides of this, on the side cheeks. And also, I'm going to add just a little glue on each fold here. This will make it so much stronger afterwards. I usually go over it and then squeegee it a little bit, just so I don't have tons of glue, and drive it in the cracks there. Now, before that dries, you're going to fold this up. You're going to take this piece and you're going to do just like you did before and push it in. Just let it slide in there. Match up to those sides there. And look at that. It's perfect. You want to put that on the table, push down, and you can use your fingers, and you can even bring in a friend if you have one.
Did you need some help, David?
Yes. Put your fingers here, like all the way at the bottom. You just want the bottom here to push in, like this part. You don't want to push on the top, you just want to push on the bottom.
Am I doing okay?
I think so. So that's it. If you look in
now
there,
you're touching my hands.
It's uncomfortable. It's okay.
I'm gonna move my hands.
So as you can see, it's touching all the way here and it's touching all the way here. Everything is nice and square. Don't fret too much about it. If it's slightly offset, it's not going to look bad. It's fine.
I'm fretting.
You're fretting a little bit? I'm not. I built so many. So,
are we good?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
So that was my strength double, which is...
I just kicked it.
I think it's fine.
Oh, now I just broke it kicking it. It's fine. It's fine.
Hey, welcome to Flite Test. So now that that's dry, both sides, as you can see, there's a lot of extra material sticking out here. That's fine, we're gonna take care of that later. Now we can fold this piece over. We can add glue to the sides here, both side cheeks. And we're gonna fold this up against the sides here. So put it against the table, then push in the sides, and just hold it until it dries. Now that that's dry, we're gonna flip this over, and this piece over here, we're gonna remove the little tabs on it, just like we did on the other foldy thingies. So we're gonna remove all these little pieces here. So this piece, make sure that the paper folds down again if you push it too far. This is gonna fold in like an A fold, push it in, then push the sides in so it makes the proper shape. So we're just going to glue that in place. Just add glue along the edges of the whole thing. Fold in, A fold. So it goes on top, then push in, push the sides in, make sure everything is nice and straight. Push it against the table. Your nose is almost complete. All you need to do now is cut off the excess, fold the paper on the bottom here. You need to cut that off to make it nice and sharp. And now what I usually do is I go over it with a razor and I just push it towards the edge here. And then when you get to the middle, you flip it over and push the bottom against the table. You go over the whole way here. You can do this with a scissor as well, but I like the sharpness of the razor blade. Look at that. Just repeat that on the other side. Oh, that turned out pretty nice. That's your nose complete. Now I'm going to bring in the plane again. And this is a pretty neat feature about this plane. The nose is just taped on. You can glue it if you want to, but in a case of an emergency or a very hard hit to the ground, this nose actually accordions in, absorbs an immense amount of energy, leaving the rest of the airplane intact. So all you have to do is just cut off the nose, build a new nose, and we're going to sell extra of these on the website. If you have an accident, you can simply build a new one and put it on, and you don't have to build a whole new plane. So we're just going to tape this on. I'm going to use some clear packing tape. I'm going to have a piece that fits in between there, and I'm going to put this in the middle, just like that. And we're going to start with one side, and so the camera sees. So what I usually do is I fold this one back, and then I just push this up against, and I have it on the table so I know it's all square. And I let this fold in, and I just push that. And now this acts like a barn door. So I can very easily add a piece of tape on the other side without any hassle. So same thing here. Fold it back, and let that touch, push it against the table, and just let it fold back. Push it properly, and it is a strong joint. It's pretty strong. It picks up the whole plane. So you don't have to have too much tape. It's a big, nice surface. You can add more tape if you want to. You can glue it if you want to, but I recommend taping it. So now you need a guy in the top hat. This is the canopy. First thing, this is the B-fold, so we need to remove this piece of foam in the middle here. Again, be sure that you don't pull the wrong way on the paper because it will tear. Same thing on the other side. While you're at it, you can remove all these little pieces. Even on the top here, remove all the pieces while you're at it. Now, we're going to do a bevel cut at a couple of places here. You want to bevel this edge until that meets here. This piece here, you want to bevel 45 degrees. Same thing on the other side. And also, you want to bevel this edge here. That side and that side you want to bevel as well. Now that you've beveled those edges, we're going to take the barbecue skewer and we're going to drag it across here. We're going to score those lines a little bit. There we go. So that folds upwards like that. This is the fold you want to start with. You're going to fold this up. You're going to fold it against this piece. Make sure it's folded properly so you get the proper angle. So you want to add glue on the edges here, in between here, and that's the only place you want to glue at this point. And also in between here, make it nice and strong. Put it against the table, fold it towards itself. This is an A fold, so that goes on the inside. Push against there, and also on the outside here, make sure that the paper being pushed in, and push this against the table. Now that that's dry, we can glue this piece. So we're going to add glue to this side here, and then each of these side cheeks here. And fold that down, push it, and remove the excess glue here and here, and just hold that until it dries. We're going to take this piece here, now that it's dry, and we're going to fold this into B-fold, like it says here. I'm going to try and show you. So you want the side cheeks here on the side and then fold them up 90. It's gonna break at this point and it's gonna leave a gap here. Don't worry about that, it's supposed to be like that. That's what makes this nice angle here. This is kind of difficult to get the glue in the proper spot. Shove it in there and push some glue in. Like, get it properly in there. Like we did before, push it down and against the table and make sure it's 90. Hold it in place and let it dry. Also, you can add some glue here in that fold to add some strength to it. So I'm just going to add some glue there, and then I'm going to squeegee that into and over the groove here. That adds a lot of strength to that joint. So I'm just going to add that to the other side here. Next, we're going to do this fold here. And this is an A fold and another A fold that folds completely over, making a little box. To get the absolute best result, I would recommend starting with just this tiny little piece and do one fold at a time. Add a little glue on each side. Just like before, fold it up, push it against the table and push the sides in. Leave it there to dry. Now we can glue this top piece as well. So I'm just going to add glue to the sides just like before. I'm going to fold this like an A so it goes in the inside, makes it nice and flush. And I'm going to push that against the table, the edge of the table, to make the paper lie flat. Move it around a little bit. It doesn't hurt to move it around because if you have some excess glue that's spilling out, you don't want it to stick to the table. It's looking pretty good. You remember that piece you cut out earlier? This one? We're going to use that one now. See, there's holes here. If you built this properly, they will line up with these holes that were already on this piece. So I'm just going to add some glue to the top and the bottom. You don't need this piece. It's not vital, but it helps steer a little bit and it makes it look nicer when you take the piece off. Now we should check that it actually fits on our plane. It's going to slide just right in there. Perfect. You got a barbecue skewer included in your kit, and we're going to insert that in here, and that's going to match up to these holes here. So every time you put it in, it's going to match up and it's not going to fall out. It's not possible for it to catch some air in the front and lift it up. So cut off two pieces that's roughly 1.5 inches. Sharpen the edges. Now, just like all the other swappables, you're going to insert these with the pointy side out this time. We're going to glue these in place. So first you want to test fit them, and then you want to add a tiny little bit of glue on it. Just a little bit. Don't need a ton. And we're going to insert this using a twisting motion. And make sure it's nice and straight in each direction. Then if there's any excess glue, make sure you wipe it off. Repeat that with the other one. Now we're going to test this against the front here. First time it's going to have to expand the holes on it a little bit. So wiggle it back and forth until it lets go. There you go. And that is a perfect fit. If it doesn't fit up nice, if it's too loose, what you can do is just add a drop of hot glue on the back here. That will add the friction on the back. Or you can add a piece of tape over here and add a little piece on the top here first, so you can lift that off time after time. But this is not going to fly off anytime soon. Now we're going to add the canards. So we haven't removed these tabs yet, so go ahead and do that. One thing you have to do as well, even if you just pop them out, if you look in here, because of the fold, it actually protrudes down a little bit. This is not square against that. That means that when you push in the winglet, it's not going to go in all the way. So what you need to do is use your razor blade and cut here. Cut out that little part. This is going to make it so much easier to insert the canards at the right angle. Do the same on all 4 holes. Take your canards and test fit them. Make sure they go all the way in. That looks really good. So I'm going to add glue to this. on the inside here and put it into place. Now it's important that these are angled the same, or that they have the proper angle. And to do that, you have to sight it against the back end of either on the table or the back end of the wing. I look down and I make sure it's perpendicular to the wing, so it's nice and flat. And I just hold it there until it's properly dried. After that's dry, I highly recommend going over with the hot glue gun. Again, add a string on the top here, squeegee it in there so you get a nice solid joint in between there. Because this glue is the only thing that holds on the whole winglet, so you want a nice surface connecting both. And make sure after you add more glue, it might heat up the old glue and it can droop again. So make sure it's straight after you add each bead of glue. Add one to the top and one to the bottom. Repeat the process on the other side. Okay, the plane is almost done. All we have to do now is install the control horns and make sure that we have the proper throws and setup on our servos. So just like all the other swappables, dry fit first. There you go. Add a little glue in there. Push it in. There we go, and do the same on the other side. Take your push rods, and as you can see, you get way too long a push rod. I mean, you don't need that much, but these cost us the same to get as shorter ones. So why not give you the extra? Roughly measure how long the push rod needs to be, and then cut it to length. Don't cut it too short. You can always cut it again if you cut it too long. That's perfect. Insert it in the top hole because you don't need that much throw. Especially if you're running an EDF version, this is going to be plenty of throw. I'm using a linkage stopper. You don't have to, but it's very, very convenient. So I'm going to insert that through the hole. I'm going to do the same on the other side. I'm just going to install this real quick. Now I'm going to turn everything on before I tighten down the linkage stoppers. Put that up. And you need to set up a V-tail mix or an elevon mix on your transmitter. Otherwise, this is not going to fly. We have a couple of videos on how to set up a elevon mixing. Check the links below and see if you find it if you need help. These need to be, if you put them flat against the table, that's actually the throw you need, because the canards have a positive angle of attack of 10 degrees. That makes the nose pitch up. Usually when you have a canard, there's more lift in the back, which means that the nose pitches down, therefore you need up trim. In this case, it's perfectly level when the CG is spot on. Therefore you can simply push it down against the table and tighten it down. Now it's very important that you check that everything moves the right way. If it doesn't, make adjustments. It's not going to fly well. It's actually going to fly the opposite of well. So make sure that everything is set up properly. And now we're going to check the throws. As it says on the spec sheet, you need 12 millimeter of elevon throw and 9 millimeter of aileron throw on the low rates. And I highly recommend adding 40% expos. For high rates, you need 14 millimeters of elevator and 14 millimeters of ailerons. Your setup also depends on the speed you're going to be flying at. So I highly recommend doing dual rates to start out with, because it gets pretty crazy. We're done. It's time to fly this thing. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for supporting Flite Test by buying our stuff and just watching our videos. Now, I hope you really enjoy flying this plane as much as I do, and I hope you post some videos of it and some build threads on our site, flitetest.com. Now I'm gonna go fly.